He's more than double my age and is disgusting. I wouldn't marry him in a million years. No, I won't do it. They tried to grab me and force me towards their car, but I fought back. As they tried to grab me, I punch and kick and give both of them black eyes for their trouble and then make my escape. Over the next couple weeks, they tried a few more times, but I was able to fight them off each time. Eventually, they stopped trying, and I began to feel safer. Hey there, my name is Sylvia, and it's amazing that I've turned out as good as I did. Here, let me tell you what I mean, and you will understand. Let me start that by saying that my parents are terrible people. They own a grocery store and have always put making money over literally everything else. All they ever cared about was how to make their bank account grow. They were so obsessed that sometimes they would even do some very awful things like change the expiration dates on some of the meat, eggs, or milk. They did it so much that I was always amazed that people didn't get sick. Hey, Dad, did you change the expiration date on the chicken wings?
Yeah, so what if I did? Those dates are just suggestions anyways.
They aren't, Dad. They're on there for a very good reason. If someone buys that chicken and gets sick, then they can sue you. It's against the law.
Well, so long as no one snitches on me, then I should be fine. Are you planning on making trouble for this family?
Of course, I didn't dare even think about calling the authorities on my parents. I probably should have to be honest, but I knew that if I did that, they would have beaten me to a pulp. After all, it wouldn't have been the first time that they got angry enough to abuse me. They were so cheap that from the age of 12, they had me working at the store. There was even a few times where I got sick and I was forced to still work. I had no time for taking days off. I still had to go to school and work shifts at the store. I felt so incredibly powerless. Even though I was so young, they demanded that I work just as many hours as them, and they always refused to pay me for the time I worked as well. It was so bad that many weeks I would work over 40 hours, and that was on top of going to school as well. With that kind of work schedule, I pretty much had no social life outside of my one and only friend David. He was always kind and patient with me, and really understood that my parents were awful people. More than once, he begged me to call the police and report my parents for abusing me, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. After all, they were my parents, and I didn't want them to get in trouble. Plus, I just assumed that once I turned 18, that I would just leave home and head off to school. After that, I would finally be able to get a job and move out into the world on my own. David tried so many times to get me to realize that my parents had no such plan for me. Sadly, I didn't realize that they did have a plan for me, but rather than it resulting in a wonderful and happy life. Instead, they just viewed me like one of the items that they stocked their store with. I was nothing more than merchandise to them. One day when I was 17, I came home after school and the store was pretty empty except for one man. He was in his late 40s and he was wearing clothes that were very soiled and covered in mysterious stains. Not knowing where my parents were, I sat behind the cashiers to both keep an eye on the guy, but to also ring him out when he was done shopping. However, he was not picking up any items. Instead, he just kept looking at me, and it made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Finally, after about 15 minutes of him staring at me, he finally came over to the checkout counter.
Hello there, Sylvia.
Hello? How do you know my name?
Didn't your parents tell you?
What were they supposed to tell me? Who are you?
I'm Katso, and your parents promised me that you would marry me.
Okay, listen, buddy. My parents are pretty crappy people, but they wouldn't just sell me off to someone like you.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. Your parents owed my parents a lot of money, and so they made a deal. I would get you as my wife, and the debt would be wiped clean.
What debt? And you do realize that I'm only 17, right? I'm not old enough to get married.
You are if your parents agree to it, and I'm sure a girl as pretty as you knows all about men. I just want you to know that I plan to start trying to have kids right away. I hope that you understand, seeing how pretty you are. I know I'm going to enjoy being your husband.
I was shocked. So much so that I didn't move until he came behind the counter and started groping me. He started touching me inappropriately, and before I knew what I was doing, I grabbed a stapler behind the counter and hit him over the head with it. And then while he was stunned, I kicked him as hard as I could between the legs. While he was doubled over in pain, I ran out of the grocery store. I had no idea where else to go, and so I went straight over to David's house and told him about the latest thing my parents had done.
Oh, Sylvia, that is insane. There is no way you can go home. Please, you can stay here.
I was so incredibly grateful to David and his family. They really helped me out. David's family owned several restaurants around town and had a large mansion and even had a pool house, which is where they had me stay. It wasn't that special, but it was great having the place all to myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe and able to finally relax. The next day, my parents began blowing up my phone. I refused to answer my phone and just let their calls go to voicemail. The messages they left were very cruel and rather insistent. Luckily for me, though, David's parents refused to let them onto the property, and so while in the pool house, I was untouchable. However, when I would leave to go to school, they tried their best to talk to me and get me listen to them.
Sylvia, how dare you make us look bad? You are our daughter, and you will do as we tell you.
Yes, I'm your daughter, but you don't own me. You can't just sell me off to pay off your debts. And how did you end up owing that pervert's family money anyways? I thought you two were making good money from the store.
We want to expand and open up new stores, and so we borrowed money from their family, and all it cost us was your worthless hand in marriage. We always knew we would sell you off, but we had never dreamed we would get so much for you. Now, if you know what is good for you, then you will do as you are told and marry him.
He's more than double my age and is disgusting. I wouldn't marry him in a million years. No, I won't do it. They tried to grab me and force me towards their car, but I fought back. As they tried to grab me, I punch and kick and give both of them black eyes for their trouble and then make my escape. Over the next couple weeks, they tried a few more times, but I was able to fight them off each time. Eventually, they stopped trying, and I began to feel safer. Meanwhile, I began to spend more time with David since I didn't really want to go outside very often. I was safe on his property, and every time I left, my parents would harass me. However, that time together was pretty amazing. We had known each other for years, but the time together helped us get to know each other even better. I actually began to develop feelings for him, and I was surprised when he began to as well. We started having date nights where we would watch movies and go for walks. Eventually, my parents stopped coming around, and I was able to get myself a job and start saving up for college, although David's family promised to help, but I wanted to contribute as much as possible. When the time came, David and I went off to college, and by the time we graduated, we were not only ready to start our lives, but we were also madly in love and engaged as well. I was dreading heading back home since I assumed that my parents would automatically begin to harass me, but they didn't. I then found out that after I had left that my parents ended up losing their store. In order to pay back some of their debt, they were forced to liquidate their belongings, however it wasn't remotely enough, and they were forced to declare bankruptcy and ended up living on the street. Part of me felt guilty for them, but considering what they expected me to do, I couldn't feel too guilty. They made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. Seeing their store all boarded up made me have a strange sense of justice, but also sympathy. My parents were terrible people, but the store had originally been built by my grandparents, and they had unfortunately passed it over to my parents. David and I decided that we should use some of his family's money to buy the store and reopen it. A few days after we reopened, my parents showed up and begged David and me to let them own the store with us. Neither of us wanted anything to do with them, and when we refused,
You both will regret this, Sylvia. You have brought nothing but pain in our lives.
then my dad and mom attacked us with knives. Luckily, we managed to escape and later reported the incident to the police and filed a restraining order against them. We never saw them again. We later heard that my parents were so desperate that they started selling illegal items, like drugs, to make some cash. They were busted while going to deliver to a client and are now serving time in jail. And so years later, David and I are married and we've had 2 children. The store is doing better than ever since we make it a priority to make people happy and not just chase after profits. It's doing so well, in fact, that we are planning on opening more stores as well. But I can assure you that we have no intentions of selling off our children in order to do so. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.